and welcome to worship at St. Andrew. I'm Justin Bullis, the Director of Production and the Online Worship Experience, and it is my privilege to welcome you on this Trinity Sunday, which is traditionally celebrated the week after Pentecost. I am grateful, as always, to share this sacred online space with you, where we are all invited, included, and valued as vital and beloved members of our broader worshiping community. Please take a moment to visit gostandrew.com/sign-in to let us know that you're here and share some information about yourself. We'd love to know from where or from when you're joining us, or if you have any prayer requests or questions about our church. If you would like to explore deeper engagement with the work God is doing in and through the St. Andrew community, you can email us directly at connect@gostandrew.com. We would love to hear from you. Lastly, if you would like to contribute a financial gift to the work and ministry of St. Andrew, you can visit gostandrew.com/give or text St. Andrew to 28950. As Reverend Mark reminds us every week, St. Andrew is an open, affirming, inclusive congregation that welcomes all people into the full life and communion of our church. This includes saints and sinners, believers and skeptics, the lost and the found, the wanderers and the wanderers, families of all shapes and sizes, and people from every point along life's journey. No matter who you are or where you've been, no matter what you believe or even if you believe anything at all, you are welcome here and you belong here. So now let's listen together as Reverend Mark brings us the final sermon in our current preaching series, Swimming Against the Tide, 7 Social Practices That Can Save the World.
The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah,
"When you act as midwives to the Hebrew women, and see them on the birth stool, if it is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, she shall live."
But the midwives feared God. They did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but they let the boys live. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people,
"Every boy that is born to the Hebrews you shall throw into the Nile, but you shall let every girl live."
Now a man from the house of Levi went and married a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a fine baby, she hid him 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and plastered it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds on the bank of the river. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her attendants walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her maid to bring it. When she opened it, she saw the child. He was crying, and she took pity on him.
"This must be one of the Hebrews' children,"
she said. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter,
"Shall I go and get you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?"
Pharaoh's daughter said to her,
"Yes."
So the girl went and called the child's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her,
"Take this child and nurse it for me, and I will give you your wages."
So the woman took the child and nursed it. When the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and she took him as her son. She named him Moses because, she said,
"I drew him out of the water."
If you were asked to name all the people over the course of your life who've helped you become who you are today, who would make your list? All the people who helped you get from there to here, from then to now, from before to after. All the people who had lent you a hand or gave you a leg up, and took a chance on you, put themselves on the line for you, invested in you, challenged you, maybe said to you, no, or not yet, or not ever. Maybe said to you, step it up, chin up, grow up, or get up and go. Who's on your list of personal influencers? Parents, grandparents, extended family, teachers, mentors, coaches, bosses and colleagues, close friends and complete strangers? acquaintances, and even adversaries. All those you've ever known, and perhaps even those who were here long before you were ever even a thought. It's a miracle, really. You are a miracle. You could have been a million different people, were it not for the million different people who helped you become you. We forget this. We're led to believe the cultural myth that we're self-made, that we scratched and clawed our way to get here. Hard work and persistence and bootstraps and all that. No one handed me a thing, people will say. I did all this on my own. I earned this. Yeah, right. The legendary football coach Barry Switzer once said, "Some people are born on third base and go through life thinking they hit a triple." I'm not exactly sure why a celebrated football coach used a baseball metaphor, but he was right. Just because you're standing on third base doesn't mean we hit a triple. How did you get on third base? And look, you really are on third base, by the way. I mean, relatively speaking, there are 7.8 billion people on this planet, and you are here in one of the wealthiest, most advanced nations in the world. Many would say that you won the lottery without even buying a ticket. And I know it's not that simple. Maybe born on third base seems like a stretch. Maybe you had a tougher life than most. And maybe you really did have to work really hard. And it felt like no one hated you anything. But before you make that your singular truth, I want you to think about this ancient story about the birth of Moses. In the opening scenes of Exodus, Pharaoh's daughter goes to the river to bathe and spots a basket caught in the reeds. Inside the basket is a newborn baby, a Hebrew baby boy, who by Pharaoh's order should have been tossed into the river to die, along with all the other Hebrew baby boys. This was Pharaoh's strategy for preventing the Hebrew population from overtaking the Egyptians. But it turns out that no one is really going along with Pharaoh's deathly order. First, there are these two Egyptian midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, who conspire to defy Pharaoh's order by saving all the male Hebrew babies. Shiphrah and Puah are Egyptians, but still, we're talking about babies here. So they set up their own little underground railroad and get the Hebrew baby boys into safe hands. And Pharaoh can't figure out what's going on exactly. The Hebrew population in Egypt just keeps growing. The joke is on him. And meanwhile, all the Hebrew mothers in Egypt are equally defiant. These are the first moms in human history to call themselves mama bears. One of them, after giving birth, refuses to hand over her baby to die. She'll take her chances by putting her baby in a basket and floating that basket down the river and hoping for the best. Maybe the river was the Underground Railroad. We don't know. But we do know that sometimes when you do what you can and hope for the best actually happens in the most improbable ways. Of all the people who might find this baby in a basket, it turns out that Pharaoh's daughter is the one who does find it. Pharaoh's daughter. Spotting the basket in the reeds and hearing the cries of a baby, she plucks him from the water, arranges for a Hebrew woman to nurse him, and later she adopts the boy as her own son. And she names the baby Moses because, she says, I pulled him out of the water. Moses. The name means to pull from or draw out. What we have here is a great story. It's full of defiance and courage, compassion and irony. Shiphrah and Puah, the countless unnamed mothers, even Pharaoh's daughter, all conspiring to undermine the deathly systems of oppression, pushing back against the evils and injustices of empire. I wish we knew the name of Pharaoh's daughter who, quote, pulled him from the water. Because in that one act, in that one moment, she altered the course of human history. She used her privilege to ensure the survival not only of one child, but of an entire nation. She pulled from the water a child who would one day pull the Hebrew people out of slavery in Egypt and through the waters of the sea all the way to the promised land. When Moses was pulled from the water, the whole trajectory of human history was altered. And it was Pharaoh's daughter who did the pulling. Who are you pulling from the water? Are there people in our lives, our neighborhoods, our communities, our world, who are drifting helplessly down some deadly river, imperiled by the forces that are beyond their control? Who are you pulling from the water? Are there people crying out for help, for justice, for compassion, for a chance, for a meal, for your life-giving presence? Who are you pulling from the water? Are there people who have so much potential and possibility and promise that, like Moses, can impact the world if only someone like you, me, would step off the shoreline and lend a hand? Who are you pulling from the water? Futurist Faith Popcorn has for decades been writing about the cultural trend she calls Save Our Society. She observed that something sparked our do-good impulse in the mid-1980s. Gradually at first, and then more noticeably, people began to step up to improve the world. There were humanitarian projects like Live Aid and music ventures like Feed the World, engineered all to raise funds to help with the Ethiopian famine. Refugee crises around the world galvanized the public. The Exxon Valdez oil spill, it sparked a renewed commitment to environmental justice. Taken all together, suddenly it wasn't enough to care only about one's own family or town or even community. A global conscience was birthed, and the Save Our Society trend swept across the nation. But for those who follow Christ, saving the world has never been a trend. It's always been a way of life, a core commitment, and the measure of our faith. Love God and love your neighbor, said Jesus. Do justice, love kindness, walk humbly, says Micah. Or, as the Apostle Paul once said, instead of each person watching out for their own good, watch out for what is better for others. Paul says, adopt the attitude that was in Christ Jesus, who emptied himself by taking the form of a servant. Who are you pulling from the water? How are you using your own gifts and passions and privilege to lift someone up, to invest in their future, to play your part in the ongoing, unfolding story of God's redeeming work in the world? The Apostle Paul says that for Jesus, it started with understanding the unique privilege that he had in this world. For Jesus, that privilege was power in the form of equality with God. Jesus and God were co-equals. Jesus could have exploited that status, but instead of leveraging his power for self-gain or self-preservation, instead of clutching it or saving it, he poured it out and gave it away, emptied himself. Jesus used his privilege to pull the world from the water. And Paul says, do likewise. He says, have that same mindset. It all starts with acknowledging our privilege. We all have it. Some of us occupy positions of power and influence in our communities, in our organizations. Some of us have been blessed with the resources of money and time, education, talent. Some have the privilege of life experience, having overcome great adversity or trauma, or having beaten the odds. And through it, you've gained invaluable wisdom and insight. Some have the privilege of seeing life through the lens of deep hopefulness and fierce faithfulness. These are the ones that can be surrounded by cynics and doubters and pessimists, but they're never shaken. Some of us have the privilege of being male, and we never have to experience the discrimination and harassment that women sadly endure daily in this world. If you're male, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to have complete sovereignty over your body, your reproductive rights, your choices. Some of us have the privilege of being white and never have to worry about the dangers of moving through this world in a brown body, driving while black, shopping while Asian. If we are privileged with an able body, we never once have to figure out how we're going to get up that flight of stairs or use a public restroom in a wheelchair. If we're straight, we never have to worry about holding hands with our partner in church. We never have to worry if the bakery might refuse to bake our wedding cake because of who we love. So you see, in this sense, some of us really are born on third base. If you disagree, just ask why it is that women earn 84% of what men earn. Why blacks earn 30% less than whites and are 10 times more likely than whites to be incarcerated. The point is privilege. It's hard to see when you're standing on third base. I've learned this lesson the hard way many times. Years ago, I led a team from my former church to Mississippi to rebuild homes after Katrina. Our time was spent building, and one afternoon while we were all taking a break, I was talking with the woman who owned the home that we were working on. She was a single mom with a 4-year-old daughter. Her physical disability prevented her from gainful employment. She lived on a government check each month. Their home had been swept away by the storm. They were now living in a FEMA trailer while volunteers built their new home. We were talking during a break while her little girl played on the floor. At the time, I thought of my own son, Matthew, who was the same age at that time and beginning his first year in preschool. And I asked this mother where her daughter went to preschool. And almost immediately I regretted my question. I should have known. This mom was too poor to send her little girl to preschool. And I knew, but I didn't know. A lot of little girls in Mississippi are too poor to go to preschool. And because of that, they're more likely to be chronically poor for the rest of their lives. Some people never even get to first base. And the game seems to be rigged against them. And we can feel badly about this, or we can do something about it. We can agonize over this, or we can organize. And Jesus chose the latter. Jesus poured out his privilege for the poor, the widow, the orphan, women and children, the oppressed and the captive, the sick of body, mind, and soul, sinners and prodigals. And he asks us, who are you pulling out of the water? It starts with acknowledging that we are remarkably, wonderfully privileged. Like Pharaoh's daughter, we can do for Moses what his Hebrew mother, the mother who put him into the river, could not do. And if we can acknowledge our privilege, we can then begin to leverage our privilege in life-saving ways. As Paul says, instead of each person watching out for their own good, we can, like Jesus, watch out for what is better for others. And leveraging our privilege looks different for each of us. For some, it looks like being a frontline helper by rebuilding a home after a storm, feeding our houseless neighbors downtown, joining the fire response cleanup team in Boulder. Helping is a form of sharing our privilege. For others, it looks like being a healer, tending to the human traumas caused by poverty, disaster, racism, discrimination, hunger, homophobia, injustice. It looks like sitting and listening and caring and consoling. These activities, they're forms of sharing our privilege. It's a Mother Teresa kind of love. For some, it looks like being a truth teller, speaking up, marching, critiquing the world because you love it too much to ignore it. You don't have to be religious to do this. Some of the best truth tellers among us are comedians and satirists, people who make us laugh at our own madness until we can see the ugly for what it is. How did the poet Robert Frost put it? I had a lover's quarrel with the world. Some can be a natural bridge builder, working across divisions with patience and grace, compassion. Like my good friend in Belfast, Reverend Gary Mason, you can set a table, you can invite your enemies to sit down and eat, and you can refuse to leave the room until you've brokered peace. Bridge building is a form of sharing your privilege. And some can choose to be a holy disruptor who, like those Egyptian midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, refuse to follow Pharaoh's order. Like Rosa Parks, refusing to leave her seat. Like Nelson Mandela, inspiring a whole movement from a prison cell. Like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who said, we are not to simply bandage the wounds of victims beneath the wheels of injustice. We are to drive a spoke into the wheel itself. And some can be a patron, using one's resources of money or time, one's competencies and connections to make a difference or to fund change. And some can be a visionary who can see possibilities and cast ideas and envision the structures and scaffolding needed for a better tomorrow. We need more visionaries and dreamers. Martin Luther King never once said, I have a strategic plan. He had a dream for a better future. Who are you pulling from the water? It depends on who you are. Are you a frontline helper or a healer? Are you a truth teller or a natural bridge builder? A holy disruptor, a patron, a visionary? These are just a handful of the ways you can leverage your privilege and you can change a single life. Maybe even save the world. Our takeaways for today. Some people are born on third base and others never get to first. When we honestly acknowledge our privilege, we can courageously leverage it for good. If we are not pulling someone from the water, Pharaoh wins.
You'll find me with the broken and the weak in the spaces in between. You'll hear my voice cry out with those who weep, only if you're listening. Whatever you do for the least of these, you do it unto me. You'll find me with the ones without a voice, the forgotten and ignored. My blessing is on those who love the poor. Will you open up the door? Whatever you do for the least of these, you do it unto me. Whatever you do for the least of these, you do it unto me. Alleluia, alleluia. God is among us. God is among us. Alleluia, alleluia. God is among us. God is among us. By this the world will know the Father's love. We will know the Father's love.
I'm Jason Snow. I currently serve as chair of St. Andrew's Church Council, and I've been a member here for 17 years.
I'm Kathy Dunwoody. I serve as vice chair of lay leadership, and I've been here about 17 years too.
We're here today to share an exciting next step towards St. Andrew's vision to eradicate social isolation and disconnection. Many of us are joyful that we can again be together right here in this building, but the pandemic was a reminder that church happens whenever and however Christians come together in community for service and worship, or simply to connect. The Christian church has a long tradition of organizing not only under the main steeple, but also in homes, communities, and in our modern times, online. With these opportunities in mind, St. Andrew is ready to begin pursuing satellite communities. Over the past several months, a committee of St. Andrew members brainstormed dozens of potential opportunities, created a value framework for narrowing them down, conducted preliminary market research, and ultimately proposed 3 top opportunities that we're ready to begin pursuing. The committee's approach and decision criteria were validated by Church Council on March 17th. The recommendation to pursue these 3 new communities was voted and approved at our most recent meeting on May 19th. We'd like to thank everyone on the Satellite Community Strategy Committee and our entire Church Council for their thoughtful ideation and discernment.
So the first of 3 opportunities is for a virtual community, which will bring together a remote group through online interactive worship with opportunities to connect. In many ways, this community has already started. Every week we hear from new and recurring attendees who join St. Andrew's worship service from around the world. They hear St. Andrew's message and music, but haven't yet had that opportunity to fully connect.
The second satellite opportunity is within the communities growing near us in Sterling Ranch and the Canyons. If you're not familiar, these are both new developments that have an influx of people, often new to the area, and without many physical church options in their immediate neighborhood. We believe St. Andrew's distinctive mission and outreach opportunities will serve their needs and help them build social connections with their new neighbors.
So the third satellite opportunity is at Windcrest, and many of you know that's a senior living community here in Highlands Ranch. We see an opportunity to provide worship, small group study, and outreach opportunities for the residents there. There are a number of Windcrest residents who attend St. Andrew in person every week, and we believe there are many more who don't know about St. Andrew yet, and who would be much more able to participate in an experience if it happens within their own facilities.
All three of these communities have people right now who are seeking the social connections and distinctive missions St. Andrew is uniquely great at providing. This whole plan for satellite communities is also the third and only remaining component of a long-term strategy St. Andrew adopted several years ago. You probably have questions. We do too. We've decided to start pursuing these opportunities in earnest. There's still a lot to figure out, and we need your help.
So there are two ways to get involved. We hope that one of these three opportunities will inspire you. We're looking for people who can help develop these ideas and ensure their success. You can reach out to either one of us, or you can call the church office. You can also plan to join the all-church informational sessions that we're going to hold at the end of the summer. They're going to be 3 30-minute meetings, one for each of the satellite opportunity communities. That will be held after church. It's both in person and via Zoom.
We hope you're as excited about these opportunities as we are, and we'd love to have your help. Thank you for creating the strong community we already have here. It's something special, and too many people haven't experienced it yet.
And now, as you return to the rhythms and routines of your busy lives this week, I leave you with this benediction from Tom Schumann, posted on his Lectionary Liturgies blog. God, who created you in the divine image, sends you forth. We go to reflect the presence of our Creator to everyone we meet. Jesus, who has redeemed you, has established the reign of God in our midst. We go to bring healing to the broken of the world. The Holy Spirit, who calls you to be God's people, goes with you to many places. We go to tear down the walls that divide us and to build lives of hope for all of God's children. And now may the peace of the rolling waves, the peace of the silent mountains, the peace of the singing stars, and the deep, deep peace of the Prince of Peace be with you now and forever. Amen.